from Hong Kong. Thanks for getting up early for this, Raven. How you doing over there today?
And thanks for pushing back your evening to see me. It's really a pleasure to be here. I love being on Happs, and I'm so thrilled to be invited to be on the Creator Studio.
It's an honor to have you on here today. Yeah, happy to extend the workday here a bit. Just want to greet people here in the comments. Please let us know where you are watching from. Say hi. Just want to say hello to you, Gregory. Thank you for tuning in. As folks get these notifications and start to join us here, I will just say that this is our second in this Monday interview series where we highlight the work of some really exemplary creators here on Happs. And again, an honor to have you with us, Raven. Just want to say hi to James as well there in the comments. And could you tell us a little bit, Raven, about your background in streaming? When did you first start?
Yes, also acknowledging hi, Gregory. Hi, James. Hi, Desiree. Thanks, everyone, for joining. And it's such a pleasure to be here. My background in streaming, I actually have a background in media in the past for about 15 years, doing commercial campaigns around Asia and semi global international campaigns as well, hosting on television, on Fox, AXN, HBO. And from that, I transitioned into taking a little bit of a break from full time media because it was quite intense, and I decided to pursue some other creative endeavors. And during that time, I discovered live broadcasting. And that was with a platform called Periscope, now defunct, that Happs is so much better than. I'm so sorry, Periscope, but it
All
really
high
it
praise.
just it just is. Um, and from my broadcasting experience on Periscope, I found it such a warm and interesting community that I just kept doing it for a few years. And then in the time that Periscope was closing down, Happs had been blooming and becoming bigger and bigger. And I discovered it from a very active broadcaster called Penguin 6, who's fantastic and who used to live in Hong Kong. So I have him to thank for introducing me to Happs. Eternally grateful.
That's amazing. Yeah, Penguin 6 was just streaming earlier today, now in DC, another great creator here on Happs to subscribe to. So just want to plug Raven as well as Penguin 6. Please do subscribe and subscribe to everyone here in the comments. If you haven't yet, let's grow this community and strengthen the ties here. So Raven, thanks again for coming on and sharing with us a little bit of your journey as a streamer. Obviously, you have an extensive media background. It really shows on camera. I've really enjoyed watching a lot of your streams over the past
Oh,
few weeks. I know that lately you've been talking a lot about a particular program that you're launching later this year. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And we do have a sneak peek. I can put up a screenshot here as well.
exciting. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for asking. And really, it's such a pleasure to be able to use live broadcasting and be at this point in time where this type of tool is available to be able to reach more people. I've decided to commit myself, my time, and my life to creating a social empowerment enterprise on financial literacy, because I realize that this area isn't really spoken about as freely as I think a lot of us would like it to be, especially in schools. Why aren't we taught basics of financial literacy when we're in school, before we go to university, before we have a chance to get into debt, before we have financial responsibilities of our own? And why aren't we taught things that would stand us in much better stead as young adults and then in our 30s or 40s? So I realized that this was a need area in society, and that live broadcasting would be a great way to be able to help me to spread out financial literacy empowerment and the beginner's first steps. So if you already have experience here, it's not going to be anything new or exciting. But if you feel like you're missing maybe a few of the 5 pillars that I talk about of financial stability, which are money mindsets, budgeting, saving, investing, wills, and legacy, then those areas are going to be the basic foundation that are in the OECD as the basic financial core literacy guidelines for youths, for 15 to 17-year-olds. And that will be in this online course that I talk about on live broadcast, and in little free mini courses as well, just to spread the word and spread the message about how this doesn't have to be so complicated an area. And as you can see, it says money, not maths, because I have dyscalculia, and I'm not sure if anyone might have noticed that I swapped around the two of the pillars, because with dyscalculia or numbers dyslexia, you mix up your numbers. And so I'll never be amazing at maths. I'll never be in the finance industry. I'm just some person like everyone else who has money to manage and didn't know how. So that's why I created this course to help other people who felt the same.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's a wonderful idea. Just want to say thanks for tuning in, Amani, as well as Jen and Fomi here. Appreciate you all being here, and feel free to ask your own questions as well about this program, about anything related to financial literacy and Raven. So it would be great to hang on, just recap maybe those 5 pillars again. I know you did an entire stream on it, but tell us about why those in particular are, the OE. Do you say OECD, OCOD? I
Yeah, I
clearly
know,
have
right?
OCD.
I know. So thank you for asking about these 5 pillars. So I created these for my own family's use because we went through, my husband and I decided it was the right time to go into building for him to go into building a fintech startup. And while we're on that journey, a lot of my own personal knowledge gaps in the personal finance space were exposed. And I realized that I'd feel much more secure if I knew what just the basic foundational pillars are. So I created this strategy for my family's use. And then I realized it was so plug and play that it could be used by anybody. And it was just making sure that I had the 5 pillars checked off. The 5 pillars are money mindsets, savings, budgeting, investing, wills, and legacy. If we can say that we are doing all of these areas and know our personal style, then we're fine. We don't need this course. It's for us to be able to share the word and empower other people by our own example in our families, in our lives. But if we feel insecure about any one of these areas, then we're missing one of the basic foundations for our own personal finance stability. And it's that simple. It's just 5. So once I realized that it was that simple and that it overlapped with the OECD core competencies for youth, um, I realized that it was something that needed to be shared. And the OECD is the Organization of Economic Commerce and Development, or cooperation, something like that. But your point exactly, Peter, is a lot of the finance industry stuff, even on personal finance, seems really complicated. And I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's necessary to have to try and remember convoluted letters, or, it's not that complicated, OECD. But, I don't
For
think
me,
that
it
we
was
need to.
apparently, but yes, I appreciate the context for those like myself who weren't fully familiar with that acronym. But
But why
I,
would we be? Why do we need to be? Like, if we have
I
no reason to know this acronym, if we have no reason to know the basics of like these financial pillars, if we've never been taught it, why are we expected to suddenly be cool with this stuff and be good at it even? We haven't been taught it. Why is that fair? And I feel like it's really unfair, a disadvantage for us to be sold so actively um, in the world advertising space and consumerism, while not having an education to look after ourselves on the flip side.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it was lacking in my education pretty much throughout until university, right? So
Mm.
there's something wrong with that. I agree, and I love that you're putting together this course. Are you targeting youths in particular with your curriculum, or is it for young adults in general?
This will actually spread. So some of my goals and ambitions are are quite lofty, but it's roughly around the age range of 28 with a broad spread to, like, I don't know, 50. And then sort of early
Um,
20s, but roughly from about 28, when you are making money and start to realize, wait a minute, I actually haven't learned all this great useful money stuff that I feel like I would have by now. And then you say, okay, I'd like to see what I can do to plug the gaps. So for a lot of people, it will be plugging the gaps. But for many people, especially who have trickier situations with student loan debt, or maybe consumer debt, or have fallen into debt, or feel insecure or underconfident about their money, it will be an area that it just helps to empower and improve confidence. And so it's saying you don't have to be good at numbers or maths for this at all. You just have to know that this is how simple it is, that you've never had the map to before. And here's the map. There you go.
There you go. That's amazing. Tell us a little bit about what money mindset really represents. I know that's also part of the brand name too, or I should say the reverse there. So, it seems like it's a core and really fundamental to the entire course. But yeah, share a little bit about what that means.
Thanks. That's a really good question. So, I think the money mindset part is where, in a decade of talking to different people in finance and in normal life, I realized that there was a lot of interesting differentiations between the people that I noticed had more stickiness with their money and the people that I noticed had money but had lost money or had a like more propensity to be unlucky with money. And that's not saying that money mindsets play every part in that. Of course, it's luck as well. Um, but I noticed that if we have money mindsets that are around lack or unhealthiness or fixed mindsets about a limited abundance of money, it can cause us to have a lot of stress around this area. And when we have stress around this area, we start to add emotions onto it. Whereas money, and I did this personally for many, many years growing up, hearing things like the money is the root of all evil and those type of other things that YouTuber Dave Ramsey addresses very well. Um, but I realized that the money mindset that we have will dictate whether we keep our money throughout our life or whether we end up making some and then losing it. And I noticed that as seemed to be a bit of a pattern. So that's why I'm looking into studying a little bit more behavioral finance and consumer neuroscience and those types of psychological areas in order to be able to get a bit better, like an insight into why that happens, and how behavioral finance, particularly with investment and money mindsets, plays a part in how we manage our money long term. So I find it a really insightful area, and it's also inspired by something I recently discovered called Mindsight. So if you haven't heard of Mindsight, it's a
I haven't.
useful psychological area that is used. It's just to be insightful of yourself, what your mind is thinking, what your mind is doing, like your personal mental landscape, and that is healthy to map for our mental health, but it's healthy to map for our financial health as well.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I'd never heard of that term either. I just want to say that we have Penguin Six, who you mentioned earlier, watching
Hi,
here,
Penguin.
commenting. Yeah, so great to see you here today. Also, want to say hey to Rev and to Randy. Excellent to see you guys. Thanks so much for joining us. We already have some questions and some comments here. Would you mind if I read one or two of those to
Absolutely.
incorporate in? Great. So, first of all, Rev says financial literacy is not a plus in the minds of many in corporate America. Educated minds scrutinize their practices a bit too much for comfort. Love your desire to educate. Very interesting. Um, Certainly noteworthy. Also, want to say that here we go. Randy saying, I like my realtor to own a home and my children's teacher to have children. Also, I expect my money advisor to have money. Wouldn't agree. There you go. So, Randy, yeah, would love to hear some more, questions or comments as well from all of you here as we go. But I think those are great to start with. There we go.
So did you want me to? Oh, is my internet being weird again?
Tiny lag, but I can see you. There we go. You're okay now. hmm There we go.
Hong
So yeah, those
Kong.
weren't really questions.
Yeah, but I do agree. I do agree that it's an interesting area that um, I feel that I have personally struggled with confidence in this area because I went into media quite young. I was working full time at 17. I was very successful across Asia. And I was really intimidated by managing money and about managing my own money. Um, and so I felt a lot of stress around this area. And as I went along in my life and along through life, I realized that this is not an uncommon issue. And I feel that life itself can be stressful enough without this area adding a load onto our plates. And I feel that, right, the education system and whatever else it may be has left us exposed to not only being vulnerable to exploitation, subtly or otherwise, in these areas of personal finance and of our spending and of debt through a lack of education. But I feel like the motivation to change that is, agreed, quite low. Right? Because there's profits in ignorance,
Yeah,
which I, I
terrific
shan't
point.
I shan't go into here too much because otherwise it will become this big thing. But I do absolutely agree with focusing on what I can do. So I prefer very much to focus on what change I can implement in my own life, how I can implement these areas more every day, how I can keep improving and growing in these areas, how I can share this in ways that helped me when I first started. I'm obviously, much further along in the journey, having already created this plan and, you know, having used it for quite a while now. Um, but I still use the pillars. That's why I found them so valuable, because they were so easy to remember and easy for someone with dyscalculia, and easy to just apply and keep in mind as a really simple structure. So I do absolutely believe that this is an area that I've decided to commit, the rest of my life and time to, as far as I can do, because I think it needs to be addressed. And I don't see a lot of other people doing it at the beginner level. So if you're underconfident to take that first step, where do you go? What do you do? You can go see a financial advisor, but you may not feel secure that you're being led down the right path, that they're helping you with the right decisions. You might not make that step because you're paranoid of being ripped off. And why wouldn't we be? Because so many of us have been ripped off. All of us have been ripped off.
Right. No, absolutely. A great point. Really, really essential to have a firm foundation before, feeling comfortable with those types of things. No doubt. I'm wondering, could you tell us a little bit about the curriculum and the course structure as you're envisioning it here? Can people sign up for it yet? You've been covering this in a lot of recent streams, so I'm sure folks have some questions.
So the website is moneymind.global. I couldn't get moneymind.com. But because it's international, I figured that global was a suitable ending. Forgot what the word is for the .com part. Um, and that course is being created right now. So you can go in and look around and get a feel. You can watch my live broadcasts and see whether my style is right for you, because it's not going to be right for everybody. Some people are going to find that I'm too rambly or talk too much or I'm too annoying, but at least you'll know that you prefer a different style, and that can help you to find your style that you like. So moneymind.global is a website that you can sign up for updates in that little column. There's just below these boxes that you can see here. If you scroll down a little bit, it says subscribe for updates, and you can get updates
There
on
we
when we
go.
launch the course, when we launch the live videos. You can also, of course, follow me on Happs, because Happs is where I'm going to be broadcasting my live videos, and across my
Amazing.
other channels as well, using Happs. But right now the course is in building, and then we're creating with a lot of testing feedback, tweaks and things, so that it's better value, using the course with the 5 pillars format. So the course itself is just going to have these 5 pillars, the same 5 pillars: money mindsets, savings, budgeting, investing, wills, and legacy, in one little course each. And they're about an hour each, so you can complete the whole thing within a week. But because that's quite a chunk, we want people to be able to decide whether they want to commit that much time. And therefore, there's going to be little free modules on each of those 5 pillars as well, that are like
Nice.
5, 6 minutes with little exercises. So you can say, oh, actually, yeah, I think this could be of value to me. Or just this exercise has been enough. I already know this stuff. So you can gauge where you're at. I mean, you can always come and talk to me on the live broadcast as well and say, is this suitable for me? I might be like, probably not. You seem to know plenty. So, you know, it's more about finding whether it's a fit for you or not. Because it's to empower people who want change and to take the next steps from where they are if this is suitable for them. And if not, then thank you for joining the conversation and for raising awareness that, just by being there, that this is important.
Absolutely. And can I ask, why have you chosen Happs for your live streaming, and how did you discover Happs originally?
Oh, I love Happs. I'm always happy to do a Happs pitch anywhere I am. I do it in front of all of my broadcasts. I'm like, everybody, I'm on Happs. So Happs was
We appreciate it.
recommended to me by Penguin6, who originally introduced me to Periscope. So once Periscope was closing, a few of us in Hong Kong said, where should we go? What should we do? And he didn't say, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. He said, you should go to Happs. And so we did, and have loved it, because a lot of us who were regularly broadcasting found that other platforms had different challenges that weren't able to be overcome. And Happs created a platform that multicast all these different platforms. So if you're seeing this on YouTube or Facebook or any of these other platforms, it's because Happs can multicast while also creating this incredible community where creators can also earn coins and they can earn money and they can actually cash out. So people who are live broadcasting and passionate about those live broadcasting communities can be rewarded. And also, as a viewer, you can reward creators that you really enjoy the content of, and you can send them coins and support them in a way that is, you know, building a community as well.
Well said. And for the record, we did not pay Raven for that incredible advertisement, but I
I
appreciate
got
it.
no coins.
Yes, we appreciate your time and the pitch, and we're really glad that you're here, and others who came over from Periscope as well in that first big wave early on this year. I just want to open it up as well again to the audience. If you're watching and you have some specific questions for Raven in her area of expertise here, please don't hesitate to ask those. We have another few minutes here before we have to sign off, and we'd love to get to any of those.
So I think also an area that's important for me to point out is that I'm not a financial industry expert. And that is a differentiator. I am some random person with a background in media. And as a result, I needed things to be much, much simpler. Also, with my inabilities with numbers, I needed things to be simple and behavior focused, not numbers focused, not crazy maths, nothing complicated or spreadsheets. Just if I do these behaviors, then this will be a different result for my financial life. And I wanted that to be available to everybody.
That's a fantastic. Rev is asking, is this for kids or adults or both? I think you said earlier, aiming for median age of about 28 or so, but really focusing on those core, fundamentals for folks who may not have a firm foundation yet. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is accurate. And also, actually, Rev has a touched on a very good point. One of my ambitions for a longer term is to also share this with schools on a charitable basis. And then also, eventually, I would love to get a literary agent and write children's books for 5 to 7 years old to help propagate financial literacy through the family cycle. So, for mothers and family members to become more confident about talking about this area, and then start to not only enact that in a way that their children can mimic or copy, but share picture books and start talking about it in an active way as well, teaching stories about compound interest or about debt, these types of concepts, but in a very, very simple way that kind of isn't too didactic. It's not too, warning about things. But making sure that these concepts are more familiar to young children because we pick our money mindsets up between the ages of 3 to 7 years old from our surroundings and from what we're taught. And not all of us are, lucky enough to be in situations where our parents are really amazing at exposing us to that. Sometimes our parents will maybe do the accounts in another room, or they'll do budgeting in another room, or we're just not involved in that type of area. So our exposure can be limited to what people are saying about it or reacting to money.
That's really interesting that the mindset in terms of financial matters coalesces at such a young age. Makes sense though, childhood is super important. That's really cool that you're thinking about expanding and exploring that area as well for providing some of these resources. Let's see, we have Randy is saying, if you're likable, all will be great no matter the content. Natural wins every time. So that's a good tip there from another great creator here on Happs. Um, I want to allow another couple questions here if folks have them for you. But I have one. I'm wondering, in terms of your orientation for the course that's focused on habits and not necessarily math specific or heavy, what are some of those tips or habits that people can pick up? Could you give us an example?
Okay, so running through the money mindsets, 5 pillars of financial stability, just very quickly on the money mindsets, we can ask, are we fixed or growth mindsets? Do we think that there's a limited amount of things, or do we think that there's an abundance of things? If we look at this in terms of our study, do we study to pass the exam, or do we study because we know accumulating that information is adding to a vast greater knowledge that's really going to be useful for us? Those are a very good way of exposing what our mindsets may be. So I went through school, I was like, oh, you just study to pass the exam, and that was a very fixed mindset, and so I've had to work on that and work through that. Then with the savings, knowing how much we're saving, how much of a percentage every month will be good for savings for us, making sure that we have at least 3 to 6 months emergency fund saved. And if we don't have that now, work towards that and have a plan. Figure out what plan we want to have for our savings, for our money. This is sort of the first area that we would be looking into implementing some kind of strategy. Budgeting, figuring out what kind of strategy we want for a budget, even if it's a no budget, like where we have just necessities and savings and then spend the rest. That counts as a budget. But if we have never tried budget before, then we want to start by just tracking expenses every day. Just what are you spending, and not taking any other action, just tracking. That's it. And then just tallying it for about 2 weeks or so, just to see where we're at and see the areas that we're spending way too much, like far too many Starbucks coffees, like $500 a week or something. We're like, oh my God.
Right. And there's some great apps, right, for tracking your expenses too. Have you used any of those, or do you have any to recommend?
Yes, I use iExpense personally because you can take photos of receipts, but there are other really popular ones like Money, which is a little rabbit and it gamifies. There's CoinKeeper, which drags coins into something. There's also Mint. There's also Planto. It really depends your personal preference, but I do find that sometimes that can be a bit overwhelming to add on to the habit of tracking as well in the beginning. So it depends on where you're at. If you're comfortable tracking stuff, then of course, sure, use an app. It will make it so much easier. But if you're not already in the habit, it can be easy after the third day to just forget to do it. And so it's whatever we will do is all we need to focus on, whatever we'll do. And that also applies to investing, getting our risk profile done at our bank. And that's free. And we can do it any bank. You just walk in or do it online, risk profiling questionnaire, and then seeing what we can educate ourselves in terms of our investing style.
What is a risk profile? So this is, I'm guessing, for your relative comfort in terms of types of investments, right? And not whether or not you're going to rob the bank or not, right? What's the point
Yeah,
here
no.
for those who may not be
Didn't
familiar?
even think of that. Yeah. Yes. So a risk profiling questionnaire will tell you, in terms of your risk tolerance, where you're at in terms of how much risk you can afford to take on and how much risk you're adverse to or comfortable with. So if you're a high risk tolerant person, then you may have a different, say, for example, model portfolio that may be appropriate for you versus someone who is less comfortable with risk, and they may have some different type of portfolio that is more suitable for them. But this is all, your financial advisors and other people that are on your side will be able to advise you in this way. But it's really good to know that often banks can sell us products based on the percentage of fees that they get. So it's worth getting multiple opinions on anything before investing and finding our style. It's like finding our clothing style. We figure out what we like wearing, what's comfortable wearing, and then we just mix it up generally, That's pretty similar with our investing. We'll find our style that's comfortable. Like I know people who wear like 5-inch stilettos every day. And that's not me, man. I wear sneakers. Okay. So, but
Works for some people,
sure,
though. Sure.
yeah, works for some people and they absolutely love it and they're used to it. And that's not my style. So I will probably have a different investing style to other people, and it's worth us doing our risk profiling questionnaire to get a bit of a sight on roughly where we're at in terms of what categories may be more suitable for us, so that we can start to understand ourselves and our own minds a little bit better. And then the wills and legacy, just if you're over 18, you need a will. Otherwise, your family gets stuck in probate for absolutely ages, and it's not worth it if you love them. So, yeah,
Good
that's
reminder.
my stance on wills. I'm quite
Good public
strong on
service
wills.
announcement, though. No, super important to keep in mind, regardless of how old you are. We do have a great question from Amani here before we sign off. I want to make sure we get to it. What's the remedy for spending guilt? Amani asks, can tracking trigger that emotion and cause further prevention? So that is a bit of a dilemma there, huh?
Yes, I completely agree. And Armani, I have been there. I have lived that life. So what I have found is um, it's quite an interesting personal element. This actually has less to do with money, and more to do with how we berate and scold ourselves. And so when we can try and work out how to offer ourselves the support that we need for doing whatever it is that we have done, then that can sometimes help with the guilt. If we know that we have done something that we think is bad or we shouldn't have done, and then we beat ourselves up about it, it can actually cause us to start falling into like a cycle of, if we do something, it feels bad, blah, 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 rather than saying, look, I did something because of a reason. What is the reason? And how can I change how I react to that reason? So for me, that's really what I had to start doing. Like, okay, am I not looking after myself in another area? Or am I not being generous enough with myself? Or am I thinking I need to have everything sorted out? Is that why I feel guilty about spending this money? And figure out what it is that I feel bad about originally, and then ask myself what I can do to support myself in that area so that I don't need to associate guilt with that anymore. If I've allocated in my monthly spending that I'm going to buy that really nice thing, then great, that's allocated. And it will take time to change the habits of guilt, change the money habits that we have created, because they've come from somewhere, right? We weren't born with money habits. They were created, and that means that we can change them by taking different actions. So with any of these areas, if we have something that we are emotionally struggling with, changing the actions repetitively and consistently will help us to start addressing those emotions. But the emotions are usually there before the action. And so that's why money mindsets are also really important, because the emotion can cause that action. They can cause us to binge eat for comfort. They can cause us to feel, bad about things that is our judgment on ourself for something. And so learning how to choose where to judge ourselves, if we want to judge ourselves, and use a healthier guidance instead of beration or instead of guilt, can be interesting to consider. I know it's a convoluted answer. It's a very big, it's a very big, really good question. Thank you for asking that.
No doubt. So we are over time. Raven, I want to thank you again for joining us today. Please do subscribe to Raven Tao here. I'm going to drop her. There we go. So we have your profile there in the comments. And again, I'm going to also put in your amazing website here where people can preview the course that you're working on.
Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone. So great to see you. And thank you for all the comments. I'm sorry that I couldn't reply to all of them as I usually do, but it's been really great to see everybody. Thank you so much for joining and for hosting me here, Peter and Pablo.
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, no, it's an honor, and we really love the work that you're doing. Keep it up, and thanks to everyone who tuned in today. And please do subscribe to Raven. Cheers. Bye-bye.